For the next 20 years of my life, the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society, which today they call it JW.org, controlled literally everything I did, I said, I thought, I read, I ate, I wore, I saw, everything. It controlled every aspect of my life.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Yasmine Mohammed podcast. With me today is Jezebel. Jezebel is an ex-Jehovah's Witness and a Doomsday Cult survivor who has written 2 books under this pen name, Jezebel. Both of these works warn about the dangers of indoctrination, mind control, and their devastating consequences. She advocates for trauma survivorship and the sacredness of individual sovereignty. Welcome, Jezebel. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Yasmine. It's an honor to speak with you. I just loved your book. I just want to say right at the onset, anybody who's listening who has not read Unveiled, you need to read it. It's amazing. So hopefully you'll be able to see a lot of the similarities from our, existence. So where do you want me to start? Right at the...
Let's start at the beginning. So I mentioned that you grew up Jehovah's Witness. A lot of us have some understanding of what that means, but we are not going to have an intimate understanding the way you do. So I want you to tell us, what's it like growing up Jehovah's Witness, and what differentiates them from mainstream Christianity?
Okay. So I want to let everyone know that when I'm discussing Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm a little older. So my parents converted to Jehovah's Witnesses 2 years after the 1975 failed doomsday prophecy. Okay. In 1976, there was an exodus of disillusioned Jehovah's Witnesses who obviously 1975 came and went, no Armageddon. They left. They abandoned the faith. The people who remained after 1975 went on a massive proselytizing campaign to refill the ranks. And
okay, I'm going to have to rewind because you're doing a little bit of inside baseball with us right now. I just want to make sure I understand. So there was a bunch of people that were part of a doomsday cult, and they really thought the world was going to end in 1975.
It's a worldwide organization. It's the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society is a worldwide organization of millions of members. Mm-hmm. And they were founded in 1870, and they have prophesied the end of times. It was the 6th time in 1975. It was time number 6. So when 1975 came and went with no Armageddon,
it's for real.
It's for real. I mean, there are stories of people who did not get life-saving operations that they needed, sold their houses, sold everything because they believed 1975 Armageddon was going to come. It was going to be the end. When that didn't happen, many people left. The ones who stayed in became super fanatic because then they were like, okay, well, maybe we just miscalculated by a few years. Armageddon is just around the corner, right?
Right.
This is the time that my parents received that knock on the door from 2 Jehovah's Witnesses and began studying. Okay. So I was only 6 years old when they started studying. And my life changed drastically because my parents are immigrants from Western Europe. I was born and raised in U.S. and, in a very blue-collar immigrant community. We were Catholic, traditional Catholic. I was enrolled in catechism. I had been baptized. I celebrated birthdays. I celebrated Christmas and Easter and all the fun holidays. And then my parents started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I remember the day when my mother picked me up at catechism and just said, and I was so excited because I remember I was supposed to bring my crayons to color the next week. And she said, "You're never coming here again." And I thought, what? You're never coming here again? Catechism is wrong. Catholic Church is bad. That night she took away my rosary beads. How you were praying up until now is wrong. we had a Virgin Mary statue in my mother's bedroom. It was like sacred. My father waited till nighttime to go out with a hammer and a black plastic garbage bag to break it and throw it away because he didn't want to offend the neighbors. And my life changed drastically. I hated the Kingdom Hall. It's like, oh, you're going to be going to the Kingdom Hall now. You'll make all new friends. I lost all my friends that I had, all new friends in the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. I went from going to these like beautiful fresco churches to these very plain, plain buildings. And it wasn't once a week. It was 5 times a week, the meetings. It was 2 2-hour meetings, 1 1-hour meeting, and then you had to proselytize. You had to go door to door. Rain, shine, snow, got to go door to door. And the indoctrination begins immediately with children. It's weaponized language. It's the frequent repetition of the cult narrative. It's guilt. It's fear. It's shame. It's for the next 20 years of my life, the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society, which today they call it JW.org, controlled literally everything I did, I said, I thought, I read, I ate, I wore, I saw, everything. It controlled every aspect of my life. One of the things they do is they start showing you pictures of Armageddon very young. It's a form of psychological terror. The pictures are extremely vivid. It's blood red skies with black clouds, with fire and sulfur shooting down to the earth, the ground opening up, people being swallowed. You start to really fear. And it was no longer about Jesus and Mary, like the Catholic religion. It was about Jehovah. Mm-hmm. And Jehovah was the all-powerful, Old Testament God who did not suffer fools gladly. He was a jealous God. He was a righteous God. He could read your mind. He could read your heart. He saw everything you did. And I became terrified. If you could sum up my childhood in one sentence, it would be, I wanted to be anybody else except me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be anybody else except me. I walked on eggshells every day of my life. I was terrified. I started bedwetting shortly after my parents became integrated. I started having extremely horrific nightmares. I had no friends in school. Unlike you, I had no friends in school. I was very bullied in school. We were not allowed, I was not allowed to salute the flag anymore. I could not pledge of allegiance to the flag. I did not celebrate birthdays anymore. I did not celebrate pagan-based holidays anymore. So the kids thought I was, oh, you hate Jesus. Oh, what's wrong with you? You're a freak. By the time I was a teenager, I was suicidal, depressed. I suffered from sleep paralysis and night terrors. And that's when I started, because most Jehovah's Witness women, I found out many years later when I left, is they suffer from, depression and anxiety, but also eating disorders. And I'm no exception. Yeah, it was bad. I tried to leave. I remember the day that I told my mother, I was 15, and I said, something, Mom, I really love Jesus more than I love Jehovah. And she flipped out on me. She called me a blasphemer. You're a blasphemer. It's blasphemy. How can you say that? And I went through a rebellious stage. When I was in my late teens, I went through a rebellious stage. I didn't want to be a witness anymore. I rebelled. I even left the house. I could barely afford, I remember eating bologna sandwiches for a week because I could barely afford to make ends meet. I was 18 years old when I left the house.
So you did move out.
I moved out very briefly, and my parents, they sucked me back in. It's like, we want you back, but you have to be a practicing witness of Jehovah. And so I went back. I was 18, 19 years old. No, it was about that age. I went back, and I said, okay, now I'm going to be the best witness I can be. Mm. And I auxiliary pioneered. Now, you have to understand, Jehovah's Witnesses are expected to go out door to door. The people who go out more than 60 hours a month are called pioneers, right? They're called pioneers because they gave 60 hours a month of going out door to door. And I did that for a couple of months. And I became friendly with the presiding overseer elder's son. And so I married Jehovah's Witness royalty at the age of 22. I married Jehovah's Witness royalty. And in 1995, I'm like really condensing my life into a few minutes here.
Yeah.
In 1995, my husband at the time brought a computer. He bought a home computer. Now, 1995, I'm aging myself, right? 1995, brought a home computer, and I did the unthinkable. I started to research the history of my religion. And that caused a lot of problems in the relationship. I was finding out all kinds of crazy stuff about my religion, just bizarre things that the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society did. And I remember one day he caught the printouts, and he came and he slammed the paper next to me, and he's like, "What is this?" And I said, this is the truth. This is our religion. This is what we're trained to give our life for. We're supposed to give our life for this religion. We're supposed to die for our brothers. We're supposed to, one of the tenets is we abstain from blood. Jehovah's Witnesses, like if I get into an accident, I can't take blood. I have to die for my faith. Like there's all these things that test your faith, that you have to be ready to die for your faith. Don't you want to know the foundation of your religion, what it's based on? And I'll never forget, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "The only thing that should come out of your mouth when the society says jump is how high." And I thought, my marriage is over. I can't live this lie anymore. I can't do this anymore. I stopped going to meetings. And he went behind my back to the elders of the congregation, and they showed up at my house with Bible in hand to find out why I had stopped going to the meetings, why I had stopped going out in service. And they were flipping through the scriptures back and forth and back and forth. And I was like, it's not going to convince me. And the whole reason that I stopped going, by the way, is in 1995, there was a dramatic shift in the religion. So something that they had always taught me from the age of 6 became inconvenient. They took it out. They started gaslighting to cover up for it, and I didn't swallow it. I couldn't swallow it. And
what was it? Is it too confusing?
No. I'll tell you what it is. Okay. It's not going to make any sense, but Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus Christ came down to earth in 1914 to rule.
1914?
1914. That he came down in 1914, and he is in heaven right now, because they believe that this is the year that the dragon, that Satan got cast out of heaven. And he's now in the last days. We are living in the last days when Satan is loose, trying to get as many people to fall as possible. So back in the 70s, they believed, and this is a major cornerstone of the religion, that the people who were alive in 1914 when this huge event happened would still be alive when Armageddon came. In fact, I had an elder tell me when I was about 12 that I would not even live past the graduation. Like I wouldn't even see my graduation out of high school, because Armageddon was going to come. The Great Tribulation, persecution, because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that only they have the truth. Everybody else is going to be persecuted. Everybody else is going to die while they get persecuted. They are the only people who have the truth. So, 1995, the people who were alive in 1914, how old are these people? They're dropping like flies, right? And nothing happened. It's another 1975 event, right? Nothing's happening. Suddenly, there's a doctrine shift, the light got brighter, and there's like a new doctrine, a new thing for us to swallow. And I said, absolutely not. My father-in-law, the presiding overseer, comes over. What do you mean you don't believe it? I'm like, I can't believe it. This is a lie. This is horrible. Like, if you had done this years ago, maybe I could have swallowed it. But you wait until everybody's dying to do this? No, I'm not going to believe it. You have to believe it. You have to believe it. And I sunk in my heels. I'm like, no, I'm done with being gaslit. I'm done with swallowing the BS tenets of this religion. I can't do this anymore. And my husband at the time called the elders. The elders came over with Bible in hand. They weren't getting through to me. They suddenly shut the Bible, looked me in the face, and said, do you know what happened to Jezebel? And I don't know if you know the Bible story of Jezebel. She was a princess who worshipped false gods, and the Jehovah's prophets came and tried to convert her, and she refused. So they pushed her out of a window where she died, and dogs ate her body. So that's why I got the name I Am Jezebel, because they actually called me Jezebel simply for questioning and for doubting.
Mm-hmm. I have a few questions. First of all, I want to know, did that cause another major exodus like what happened in 1975?
I would like to think so. We didn't have, back then, there was not the easy access of social media. There was no Twitter. There was no, like now we know everything that's going on in real time. But back in the 90s, I had a home computer with AOL. Right. And we didn't have any of the, I didn't join Facebook until 2008, 2009, maybe. So it's hard to tell. I would imagine so. I would imagine so. After I left, and it's funny that the people who allowed me to leave were my Catholic cousins, who I called them, and they said, look, you can come and stay with us. Because one of the things Jehovah's Witnesses never encouraged, in fact, they discouraged it, was college. We were not allowed to go to college because university would expose us to new ideas, would expose us to critical thinking, would expose us to independent thinking. So when I left the religion in 1997, I was 27 years old. I went straight to live with my family, and I'm thankful to this day, because if it wasn't for them, I would never have accomplished anything that I have in my life. And I ran straight into the arms of academia and went to university. It's funny because you grow up in a world where it's us versus them, because Jehovah's Witnesses foster a very strong us versus them mentality. We are taught as little children, you are different and apart from the world. What Muslims call haram, did I pronounce that correctly? This is haram, that is haram. You abstain from haram. Jehovah's Witnesses use the word worldly. You are not to be involved with worldly people. You cannot foster worldly friendships. You cannot marry a worldly person. You have to marry within the faith. You cannot dress worldly. You cannot speak worldly. You cannot listen to worldly music or watch worldly movies. Your conduct must always be with the ideology, and there's no deviation. Like if there's 10 things that the Jehovah's Witnesses present to you and you believe 9, you can't be a Jehovah's Witness. You have to believe everything. You are not allowed to question. And if you do question, they will even allow you to question something. But you have to accept their answer. Well, sister or brother, this is, you can't even say, look, I'm having a hard time accepting this tenet. Well, and they explain it, and you have to accept that explanation, because if you don't accept that explanation, you are now, as my ex-husband's friend said, you sound like an apostate. You're starting to sound like an apostate. You better be careful. You're starting to sound like an apostate. And that is the worst thing you can be, is an apostate. They are dehumanized within the cult. It is the absolute worst thing in the world that you can be, is an apostate.
So when you left him and you went to your cousins, you didn't let your family know that you were leaving
Oh, my
Jehovah's
family
Witness.
knew.
You were just leaving him. Or did
Oh,
they know you were leaving the cult?
Well, there's the thing. You cannot get divorced in Jehovah's Witness unless you can get divorced legally, but they will never recognize it in the religion unless one of the two people commits adultery. I did not commit adultery, but I wanted to divorce him for my freedom, and I wanted him to move on and find a Jehovah's Witness girl, which he eventually did. He wasn't a bad guy. I have nothing, bad to say about him. He was just a fundamentalist who didn't understand that I wanted to study, I wanted to travel, I wanted other things in life. And, and when I left, he came to find me. He came a few months later saying he wanted me back, but he made it very clear, the only way I will take you back is if you are a practicing member of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I said, no, the legal divorce still stands. And you can go live your life and do what you want to do, but I'm not going to go back.
So what were the repercussions from your family and everybody for you saying, I don't want to be a JW anymore? What is yeah.
Under normal circumstances, it would be a disfellowshipping, right? I remember I had written a letter to my husband stating that he was free to remarry. I wrote a letter to him saying free to remarry. And the elders called me one night when I was in college. I was working 2 jobs to put myself through school, and they called me one night to ask if I had committed adultery. And I said, you call me at 10 o'clock on a school night. I said, to ask me what I'm doing with my body. And I said, it's none of your business. And then I told my ex-husband, I said, because Jehovah's Witnesses do the following. When they want to disfellowship someone, they will give a talk on the sin of the person being disfellowshipped. They don't mention the person's name. They will mention the sin. For example, so-and-so is being disfellowshipped because this committing adultery is blah, 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 blah. And then they will wait a pause and then announce the person's name who's being disfellowshipped so you can put 2 and 2 together. So I told my ex-husband at the time, I said, I've done nothing wrong. I just want to go. I said, if I find out that my name was uttered from a public podium, I will hire the best attorney that money can buy, and I will sue the congregation for slander because I've done nothing wrong. And I never got officially disfellowshipped. However, everybody stopped talking to me anyway. I lost all my friends. I lost everything. I moved 2,000 miles away. I lost my home, my husband. My parents didn't talk to me. People who came to my house, I would cook dinner, sat at my table, drank my wine, ate my food. I remember seeing this one girl who we were friends, and I said, hey, how are you? And she walked past me, iced me, like as if I was a ghost. It was really devastating. It was devastating because you're 20 years in this cult, this us versus them mentality, everything that I was taught to hate because they preach love, but they're a very hateful organization. They preach all this love. They love bomb you when they are coming in the door, and they kick you on the way out. And I remember thinking, my goodness, I have nothing, and I have nothing. I've lost everything, and now I'm in this world. I'm in the worldly world that I was taught to hate, and I had no idea how to navigate this world. I had no idea. I had no idea how to navigate this world. And I remember one of the first books I read was post-cult. One of the first books I read post-cult was Raymond Franz's Crisis of Conscience. He used to be one of the governing body, one of the top of Jehovah's Witnesses. And he left. He started seeing it for what it was, and he left. And they demonized this man. And you are strictly forbidden from speaking to apostates, from watching anything or reading anything that they produce. You have to abstain. They're abhorrent, right? So I read this book expecting this monster to just flay the whole organization. And The man was full of kindness and thoughtfulness and love, and everything he said made perfect sense. I'm telling you, it was quite eye-opening, quite eye-opening. I have to say that the only good thing about my childhood was that I was born in a country where I could get a free library card, and I would lose myself in books, just books. That's all I did was read books and just lose myself, because there was no other outlet, there's no other outlet. I'm a 70s, 80s kid, so
there are so many. One of my questions for you is, what are the similarities between our stories? But there's so many things that you've said already that draw those connections. But before we get there, I have some questions about all this background that you gave us. My first question is, do you know, so what are the main differences between Jehovah's Witness and mainstream Christianity, or Catholicism, really? What I want to get to
I have a little list.
I'm interested to know, what was it that your parents, what attracted them to this cult versus Catholicism?
Well, they promise utopia. They promise utopia.
And as a Catholic, you get heaven. How was it?
Oh, but okay. It's better. Let me tell you what the differences are, and I'll get to it. It's on the list. Okay, so here are just to mainstream Christianity, Jehovah's Witnesses. Here are the main differences. As I mentioned before, Jehovah's Witnesses worship Jehovah, only Jehovah,
and that's Jesus God, basically.
That's God. That is the Old Testament Israelite God of the Old Testament, right? Which was Yahweh, YHWH, right? That the early Hebrews called Adonai, or Lord, because they were forbidden from saying that tetragrammaton. They were forbidden from saying that. It wasn't until like the 16th century that Tinsdale used Jehovah, and then it was first seen in, I believe, the King James Bible, the word Jehovah. It's an old name. So that's who Jehovah's Witnesses worship. Jesus is not worshipped. Jesus is the Son of God who died on a stake, not a cross. So Jehovah's don't believe in the cross. They don't believe in the Trinity. They reject the Trinity. To them, the Holy Spirit is just the power of Jehovah. No celebration of any pagan-based holidays. So no Christmas, no Easter, no Halloween, nothing that has pagan roots. No birthdays, because birthdays are seen as self-worship. And the two examples in the Bible of birthdays end up with people losing their heads. One was an Egyptian baker. The other one was John the Baptist.
I just want to tell you, I just want to say one thing from a friend of mine who's Jehovah's Witness. She's ex-Jehovah's Witness. She said that her mom told her that you don't celebrate the day you were born. You celebrate the day you die, because that's the day you return to God, or something like that.
Oh, that's odd. I never heard that one. No, it was always seen as self-worship. And Jesus never celebrated his birthday. We heard that one a lot too. One of the biggest things that stand out, us.
I know.
Jehovah's Witnesses. You see how deeply I haven't talked about this in a while. My last public talk at a survivor group was a couple of years ago. So because I've been traveling a lot, but Jehovah's Witnesses abstain from blood. Mm-hmm. They abstain from blood because there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about not eating the blood of a sacrificed animal. You shouldn't eat the blood because it's sacred, belongs to Jehovah. But they take it very literally, to the point that they will allow themselves to die, or a child to die, instead of giving them life-saving blood. And at the age of 12, I was given a card, a legal document. All Jehovah's Witnesses carry this. It's a no blood card that's signed by witnesses. It's a legal document, basically releasing doctors and hospitals of liability in the event that we die because of oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm using this language. See what I mean? It's horrible. No idolatry or saluting the flags. No politics. Jehovah's Witnesses don't vote. They don't vote.
Oh.
They believe in theocracy, so
politicians are never going to pander to them. That's bad.
No, they don't. They're not allowed
Yeah.
to vote because they're waiting for the theocracy.
Mm.
They don't go to war because they refuse to pick up arms to kill. They publicly proselytize. They abstain from worldly things. I already said that. I already said marry within the Lord, friendship within the Lord, shunning, disfellowshipping. They shun you. They just shun you. Dehumanize apostates. Couples are discouraged from having children.
Whoa. What?
Couples are discouraged from having children.
Explain
Because
that
you
one,
don't want
please.
to bring children into the last days and all the troubles that are coming. Couples are just, I remember many talks about couples. They don't believe in hell. There's no fiery hell.
That's like those climate people sometimes say that. They're like, the world's going to end in whatever it was, 2012. And then, they come up with it. It's very, it's got,
exactly.
Sounds kind of similar to some of these,
It's
doomsday
the
things.
political ideology and the religious ideology are going hand in hand. So there's no fiery hell. There's only death. There's no heaven, except for 144,000 chosen ones go to heaven. The rest of the people stay here on earth in paradise. So Armageddon comes. And I just found out now, this is a new teaching they have now, because I was watching, there's a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses on YouTube. And I happened to come across a video this week. And it blew my mind, because now what they're teaching, and it's different than from when I was there, is that they believe that the United Nations are going to destroy all the religions, and when the Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be the last ones to be destroyed. But just as they are about to be destroyed, angels will come and Jesus will come and Armageddon will break loose. And now this is what they believe in my time. Once Armageddon is over, the ones who are slated for paradise now have to clean up the earth, and the earth is going to be a paradise, and Jesus is going to rule for 1,000 years. And then after that 1,000 years, it's going to take 1,000 years for humanity to reach perfection, right? Because everybody's imperfect, so you need 1,000 years to reach perfection. And once all humanity has arrived at perfection, Satan will be released again. And he will try to see how many people he can, stumble, or how many people he can convince to reject Jehovah. And then those people and Satan will be thrown into Gehenna, the lake of fire, permanent death, never to be seen or heard of again. And the people who remain will just live for all eternity in perfect paradise.
Okay.
It's utopia.
So, but those people are all Jehovah's Witnesses only.
Yes.
For those 1,000 years, it's only Jehovah's Witnesses that are living.
It's only Jehovah's Witnesses who are saved. The Bible does say that there's going to be a resurrection of the just and the unjust, the righteous and the unrighteous. Meaning, if you didn't know about Jehovah's Witnesses and you get resurrected, you'll have the chance to convert. And if you choose not to convert, you can just go back to being dead.
Yeah. And they're like, JK, just as you were.
Just go back to being dead as you were. Exactly.
So if there is no hell, what happens to all the other non-believers?
They just die. You're in a state of non-existence. They don't believe in a fiery hell.
Okay. And if there's a heaven on hell, or if there's a heaven on earth, and then there's this other heaven, what's the difference? What's the point? What?
Well, no, they believe that the spiritual beings, 144,000, are going to be co-rulers of Christ for the 1,000 years up in heaven, and all the rest of the people are going to be flesh and blood like Adam and Eve on earth. It's going to be paradise on earth. Yeah.
So how many Jehovah's Witnesses are there on the planet? Do you have any idea?
The last time I checked, I think it was about, is it 8 million maybe?
Oh, wow. I was not expecting that number. Holy cow. Okay. So only if 144,000 will be chosen out of that 8 million.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody's vying to be.
they prey on the weak. They prey on the depressed. They prey on people who don't have sophistication, or who are going through a hard time. Mm-hmm. As I said, it's a close-knit community. They love bomb you. They make you feel special. Mm-hmm. They make you feel so special. I mean, you have the truth. You have the truth, and you have this responsibility to go take it out into the world. But it's funny because the ideology is so appealing that people need to be brainwashed into it, threatened, constantly psychological terror. You know, it's not something natural, is what I want to say. Because when an idea is good, you don't have to gaslight people into it. You don't have to use weaponized language, propaganda, repetitive narrative.
I'm really still having trouble understanding what it was that attracted your parents. Like, what was it about Catholicism that they weren't getting, that they needed this? Like, I don't know. Okay, so you never had that discussion with them.
I guess because they saw the name Jehovah in the Bible for the first time. I have no idea because
I'm not seeing the I guess what I'm trying to say is, what's the attractive part of this religion?
I don't know.
Okay.
I hated it.
We don't know.
I hated
I'm asking the wrong person.
No, literally hated every minute of my life in this religion. I hated it.
Girl, I know. So did your parents shun you? Or your family?
They did not speak with me for a long time. My parents didn't speak with me for a long time. They made it very clear how disappointed they were in me. My sister, who is still a practicing Jehovah's Witness, and my father, who is still a practicing Jehovah's Witness, did not come for my college graduation. And I should say that I graduated top of my class, top of my college. Like, I was really proud of myself. I worked so hard, and they didn't even show up. Yeah. They didn't show up.
I feel that. So, I have so many questions, but we're going to have to move on because we're running out of time. But thank you for that really clear, we got a really good taste of what it was like. And now let's talk about the similarities in our stories. So I found quite a few when you were talking right now. First of all, this big change happened at the same age for you. You and I were both around 6 years old when everything changed in our lives. No birthdays, and suddenly you can't have friends, you can't have this, you can't have that. All these things that you were looking forward to. You lost a community though, because you were going to Sunday school and you had your friends at the church, and you were excited with the crayons and everything. So there was something that you lost, and then this was given to you in return, instead of it, which was like a really, I'm sure, traumatic. Obviously was traumatic. You told us about how traumatic it was. The bedwetting, we have that in common.
We have more than that in common, because you married there's a lot of things we have in common. The futility, lack of control over a future. You married a fundamentalist your first marriage. You had a second marriage, which was the in-between that you learned from, and so did I. And then the third marriage was the love of the life. Me too. Same thing. And we have something else. We're both scapegoat daughters.
Yeah. What happens?
Yes. I suffered tremendously as a scapegoat daughter. I was an emotional punching bag, for my mother as well, because, I think that fed a lot into it, because she's the one who converted and then convinced my dad. She's the one who converted it and wanted it, and then she convinced my dad. And we also have something else in common. We both see how, because I didn't get the sense that you're political. I am not. I am not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm a historian. That's what I love. That's my passion. That's what I did in school. I'm an academically trained historian. I love history, and I love what's right. Like I'm trained in research, but I can see what's going on in the world. And I saw the interview with you and how you said that leftism is empowering radical Islam and empowering a lot of stupidity. There's a lot of useful idiots being used to bring in these very destructive policies that threaten our individual sovereignty, that threaten our bodily autonomy, that threaten our freedom, that threaten our civil liberties, that threaten everything. And I started to really see this, okay, back in 2016, because once I left the religion and I got my history degree, I went and traveled the world, and I write books under my real name as well. I publish under my real name, and I was asked, to compare, because I had written a book about a protagonist, 14th century protagonist, who she had to like navigate through a very difficult patriarchal world in Gothic Europe, and the host wanted me to use my platform to compare this woman's plight with what was going on this was 2018, and Donald Trump was president, and wanted me to compare how in the United States the women are being oppressed by the president. And I looked at him and I said, I'm an American woman who escaped a cult thanks to my government, who gave me the freedom to divorce and study and do everything. I'm like, if you want me to talk about women's plights, I'm happy to talk about Masih Alinejad, who I've been following since she began the My Stealthy Freedom movement. Okay, so I've been with her from the beginning. Love that woman. This woman has a fatwa on her and had to run to New York. I'm like, we can talk about that. No. Let's not talk about that. You know what? Forget it. So it's like, wait a second. So because I'm not pushing your dumb political agenda, you want me to not talk about an actual woman being oppressed, a whole nation being oppressed? That's when I started to realize that there's a lot of just stupid Marxist ideology being swallowed whole without any critical thinking or common sense behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. I think we have a lot of similarities in our personal lives, the way we both went towards education, the way we both got lost in books, books as we were growing up and dealing with all of this difficulty in our lives. We just wanted to escape into these books. But let's talk about the similarities between the religions, because you probably were interested in Masih's plight, and you probably felt like you were maybe relating to women in Iran because maybe you felt that you had some sort of shared experiences with these women. You talked about how your religion forced you to dress in a certain way or to be a certain kind of woman. So talk to us about that. Like, was there a lot of purity or modesty culture? Was there
Yes.
a lot of basically differentiation between men and women?
Yes.
Tell us
Definitely.
about that.
We are to dress modestly. We are to remain virgins until we get married. They frown upon loose conduct. There is no dating in Jehovah's Witnesses. You don't date. When you are of a mature age, if there is a brother who is interested in a sister, they can get to know each other in a way that's very wholesome. You're never alone. You're never unchaperoned. In the congregation, only the men are allowed to lead in the congregation, meaning there's the main Sunday talk. It's never a woman. It's always a man who has to do the talk. The Watchtower study. It's always a man who leads it. Now, book study, because there's 5 meetings a week. It's like they keep you so busy in the cult that you don't have time for anything else. So it's always so busy. I remember in a book study when there were no brothers, the sister who was a pioneer had to take a scarf and put it over her head. When there's a lack of brothers, if one of the sisters takes over to lead in the study or to speak, she has to present herself to Jehovah with the head covered because she's not a man. We never wore pants in the congregation. We wore skirts and dresses. Even in freezing temperatures, you wore skirts and dresses. And we were told that the husband is the head of the wife. It doesn't give him free rein to beat and abuse, because that's not, tolerated. But I saw a lot of emotional and verbal abuse in that religion. I saw a lot of alcohol being abused, and I saw a lot of dysfunction.
Well, if you're not allowed to divorce, and if you're the head of the wife, then that is in some ways giving him free rein, because what's she going to do about it?
That's another thing. That's another thing. You can't make the church look bad. And it's funny because the concept of political correctness, it's a Soviet concept that the Communist Party took so that you never say anything that makes the party look bad. And Jehovah's Witnesses and most fundamentalist cults, they have that. You can't say or do anything that makes the party look bad. And they cover up so much sexual abuse in that religion, in Jehovah's Witness religion. I personally know of at least, I can count on my hand, like at least instantly, like 5 people I know who were abused in that religion. I remember in 2016, my husband sent me this email. I was like, oh my God, Christine, you have to open this email that I sent you. It has, this study came out. A study came out that children who were raised under extreme guilt and fear develop brains differently than normal children. So I took this information, called my last psychiatrist, the psychiatrist that deprogrammed me, and I called because I too had a teacher in school who was very helpful. Okay, like you had a teacher, I had a 10th grade teacher who was just a doll. He was so nice. And I called one of the leading law firms in California that dealt with Jehovah's Witness cases. And I called I spoke to the paralegal and I said, look, this is what's happening. This just came out. And I want to know if you can start a class action suit, because we're traumatized. I'm broken. I will never be normal. I went to therapy. I took, anti-anxiety meds. I have been officially deprogrammed. But I know I'm broken. Like, I function well. But, you're scarred for life. You function, but you're scarred for life. And she said, this is definitely worth considering. I'll talk to the lawyers. She called me back 2 days later. She goes, we are so swamped and so backlogged with sexual abuse charges that this is going to have to wait. I'm still waiting for her to call. This was about 2017 that I called her.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
The psychological, it's like I tell people, it's like you are psychologically and emotionally raped every single day. Every day. And if you don't think, and I told the paralegal that, I was like, you don't think that causes the same type of, whether it's a sexual, psychological, emotional, you're scarred for life.
Yeah, I wonder if ex-Muslims can get together and do a class action suit, a global class action suit. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. We've coined it Islamotrauma. So yeah, for sure. So tell us about these books that you've written. Tell us about the ones that you've written under Jezebel anyway, just in case other people are interested, because, you talk about indoctrination and everything. And, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this right now that can relate.
Yes. The first book I wrote took a long time to write because, it's like, I'm sure it was hard for you to write. I mean, it's difficult to visit those dark places.
Yes, it is.
I came out with I Am Jezebel, a Jehovah's Witness breaks her silence. That was the first book I wrote. I published it in, I believe it was 2015, and then revised it. And it was more, I wanted to help people who were either considering joining a cult or who had just left the cult. Because, it's lonely out there. When you leave a cult, you think, oh my goodness. I even had a hard time finding a therapist because there's no way someone can understand what it's like to be indoctrinated from childhood. You just can't even fathom what it's, the mental prison that you're in. And once your mind is free from that prison, the truth will set you free. To me, knowledge was the antidote to fear. And the more I studied, the more I researched. I started researching destructive cults in college. I wrote about it. I started talking about it, started talking to groups about survivorship, about the attitude of gratitude, about all this stuff. So I put this all into that book. And then after it was during the pandemic, actually, it was in 2020. I was in Italy during the pandemic. So I had a 70 plus day lockdown, and it was really harsh. And during the pandemic is when I wrote my second book. And my second book is Full Circle, a cult survivor's warning against the dangerous cult of Marxism. Because I started seeing on television the same type of indoctrinated propaganda, terror, stay in your house. And I'm thinking, whoa, like, I have health professionals in my family, and I myself have volunteered at an emergency room. And I know that the best thing you can do is have fresh air, exercise, sunlight. And they're telling people to stay indoors, so you're not getting any exercise, you're not getting any sunlight, and nonstop 24/7 terror propaganda. I thought, I've been here before. I've been to this dance before. I know what's going on here. And then came the censorship. Like, people who were like doctors, scientists, like 30-year neurologists in Italy came out saying, whoa, wait a second, people, like, censored. Like, there was one narrative. And I thought, I've seen this before. And then came the shaming, the shunning of anybody who questioned the narrative, had any type of serious concerns. Bodily autonomy was gone. My body, my choice no longer applied. Now we're talking discrimination, mockery, slander, censorship, passports. Whoa. And I said, I cannot be silent. I have to ring the alarm bell. Open your eyes, people, because what's going on right now in the world, I've seen this before. Any idea that has to be force-fed down your throat with gaslighting, shaming, shunning, threatening, self-censoring is not a good idea. You're not on the right side of history if you're on that side. And it has nothing to do with politics, although some will make it political. And that's why I wrote the second book. Because I will not go back into a cage. I will not go back into a cage. You cannot force me back into whether it's a religious ideology or a political ideology. A cult is a cult. They're using the same tactics. And it's funny because 19th century, these Marxist ideas are going on in the 19th century. Communist Manifesto was published in 1848. What came out of the 19th century? Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, all of these fundamental sects that use the same exact tactics as Marxists to control and manipulate people are being used. The same thing. It's the propaganda in lockstep, weaponized language, repetitive narratives. I got so stressed out in 2020, Yasmine, that I broke out in auditory shingles. I have the scar on my face to prove it. My post-cult trauma hit red alert. And, this is rare. To get auditory shingles around your ear, your eye, your cheek, right on the nerve of the face, I looked it up. It's caused from severe stress. And my trauma was like blaring red sirens in 2020, just blaring red. Yeah. All that post-cult trauma was coming up. And I said, I have to get rid of it somehow. I sat down and I just wrote this like anti-Marxist manifesto and just listed all the similarities of everything that I went through in the cult and everything that I was seeing happening right now in the world today. And it goes beyond the pandemic. It goes beyond that.
No, for sure. I totally hear that.
Once the stupidity I'm forced to swallow. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, the stupidity we're still being continued to force to swallow daily. You know what I mean? Like, yes, COVID had its day in the sun. Those were a few years of, attacking anybody who was going to ask questions or whatever, censorship and all the stuff you were saying. But it's continued, it's new things, it's different things, but they're still forcing us to swallow all sorts of nonsense. And if you question it, or if you have a differing opinion, look what's happening with the Paris Olympics right now. This woman getting punched in the face by a person with XY chromosomes, and they're calling that sport, right? Or people getting so upset over Ismail Haniyeh getting killed in Iran. It's like, he was the leader of a terrorist organization. Why are these discussions happening? But suddenly we're supposed to just our common sense is supposed to just completely go out the window. We have to just accept these things. I saw this viral video that went around on Instagram of this kid videotaping his parents. So he's got his phone. He's recording his parents walking in front of him. And he says his mom's walking head to toe black in niqab, right? And then the dad is walking just like a normal human being. And the kid's recording, and the kid says, "That big black ghost in front of me there is my mom. And that businessman is my dad." And I went to the comments, and you wouldn't believe it. They're all like, "Oh, she's so empowered. She gets to dress the way she wants." Like, it's stop it. Stop it. Stop. A child knows. A child knows that she has dehumanized to the point of him calling her a big black ghost. A child knows that. And you are grown adults, and you are going to pretend that you can't tell when a human being is covered head to toe in black like that, that's problematic. Like, you're just, who are you lying to? Like, aren't you ashamed of yourselves that you're just going to pretend that you're that stupid? Like, there's so much of that going on, Jezebel. I completely agree with you. And the thing is once you've been through a cult, like once you have swallowed Kool-Aid and you have regurgitated it, you are not, like, if you just smell Kool-Aid again, you're like, no way. Like, you recognize it. But people who haven't been indoctrinated maybe don't recognize it as readily as those of us who have been through it and managed to survive. Are surviving, let's say.
You can see it.
It's a constant struggle.
Good thing. That's the one good thing that came from our suffering, is that you can see the hypocrisy, you can see the indoctrination, you can see it as clear as day from a mile away. You can sniff the gaslighting from a mile away.
And how were you able to do that? How were you able to move from past being, indoctrinated into this cult to living your authentic life today? Like, how tell us a bit about that. I know it's a big question, but tell us somewhat.
It's a great question. Like I said, I believe that if you want to solve a problem, you have to know what the problem is. And I'm humble enough to realize that I had a huge problem, because I remember, like I said, I was bullied in school because Jehovah's Witnesses, turn the other cheek. So you're bullied. I literally got slapped in school once and I didn't do anything about it. And it's like a pressure cooker. So when I left, I was like, I'm done. No one's ever going to bully me again. I went to the extreme. I became bitter, angry, confrontational. And I went and sought other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because I thought I would find comfort there. But all I found was misery there. And something in me just snapped. I said, wait a second. I just lost my childhood. I lost my precious childhood and 20 years of my life to this organization. I'm not going to give them a minute more. So I immediately go into research mode. I start researching destructive cults to find out what's wrong with me. And I immediately go speak to one of the counselors at college to try and get some anger management, get my anger down, because I was furious. You know, it's like my eyes were opened. I lost 20 years of my life. I was furious. And I ended up publishing anonymously in that 1998 journal in my university. And I never stopped researching. I never stopped trying to find a therapist. And I did finally find one. And this man, he was an older man. He was amazing. He so professional, so compassionate, so kind. And all the time I'm reading books and I'm reading as much as I can, researching as much as I can. And I adopted the attitude of gratitude, because I didn't look up just ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I looked up the lives of many people who have suffered. And I adopted the attitude of gratitude. And it's funny because I started talking to groups, and these people, you know, nowadays it's like the victim Olympics. Everybody has to be a victim. Oh, I'm a victim. Let's get the violin. So when I get invited to these survivor groups, I walk in and I'm like, you know, they think I'm going to start this big, long violin story. And I start with like, I won the lottery ticket because I was born in a first world country. I was born in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. Lottery ticket. I had clean water. I had food in my belly. Yeah, my parents were blue collar, but you know what? It was a no-frills childhood. I never went hungry. There was always a roof over my head. I made it till the age of 10. There's a lot of countries that childhood mortalities are still so high. So I had, you know, I had all my little, you know, my polio vaccine. I had all these like childhood killer vaccines. I drank clean water. I ate good food, free public education. I learned how to read. I learned how to write. I got a free library card. I read my first book at 9 and never stopped reading. And, you know, that already puts me on the top of the lucky pile. Just that alone. Yeah. And you try to extract the good out of the bad. So one of the good things that came out of being a Jehovah's Witness, and I already said one, is that you can spot the BS a mile away, and you can spot, you know, it's great as an adult having this superpower, because obviously the vast majority don't have this superpower. But it taught me how to be all things to all people, because when you go out door to door with a Bible in your hand talking to strangers, it teaches you to be a very good communicator. It teaches you to not be afraid. It teaches you to be able to talk to everyone, because I can approach anyone. Like I once had a wonderful conversation with a homeless veteran in New York, and I've talked to, you know, famous people. So, you know, famous people like you and famous people like I did independent film, and, you know, anyway, it helps you to be an excellent communicator. And that's the thing I think I got the most out of a Jehovah's Witness. But it's mostly living your best life and living minute by minute, being aware of your mortality. Because when you lose time in a cult, whatever time you have left is precious. Yeah. You can't waste it. You can't waste it you can't suffer fools gladly. You can't waste it on the past and oh, it's me and oh. You can't do that. You can only go forward.
Yeah, love it. Attitude of gratitude. So agree with you. That's really beautiful and a really great lesson for everybody. But yeah, I completely hear everything you're saying. Completely agree with you. I went through my angry stage too, and my resentful stage. I was resentful that I had wasted so much of my life in this stupid lie. And everything, what you said too about it being so isolating when you leave, and then having bad experiences with ex people that have left the same cult, you think that you're going to just like immediately connect, but not necessarily, right? People are people and they leave for all different reasons. And the trouble you had of finding a therapist, same thing here, because like you said, most people don't have that experience of being part of a cult and leaving it. So it's really hard for them to lead us through the, you know, the healing of this trauma if they don't really understand what it was that we went through. That's why I started my organization. That's why I started Free Hearts, Free Minds. It specifically supports people who have renounced Islam, because that's like not just a cult or leaving a religion, but it's like this one specifically, because it's going to have its own nuance, right? Its own destructive qualities. It's the only religion that is like within the laws of, you know, a dozen countries to execute people. And in the countries where they're not executed, they're persecuted. And if you're not persecuted by the country, you're going to be persecuted by your family, right? You're going to be, at the very least, your family is going to disown you. That would be like, you got away from this scot-free, right? So many things. I really hear you with my heart. I'm really grateful that you came and shared so much with us today. I love that you talked about the attitude of gratitude. That is my Quran. You know what I mean? Like that is what I live by now, because it's just so important to constantly feel gratitude for everything all the time. I mean, you can't help it. You can't help it. Like my husband will forget, my kids will forget, but I never can. I'm like constantly being grateful for everything, because you can't forget. As much as you want to like forget and move on and just like focus on the future and the positive, it's always there. Like I survived. For the flap of a butterfly's wing, you know, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. We know this, right? Like it was all so precarious. And so I definitely have that gratitude as well. I'm going to open this up to the people in the group here to share with you their thoughts, ask you some questions.
Sure.
I'm going to, I've got a question here from Roland. Roland, do you want to unmute yourself and ask Jezebel a question, or would you like me to read it for you? Okay, it says, my mad mom was the only baptized JW in my family. Mom and dad had met in wartime London as left-wing admirers of Soviet Russia. Dad was a vet of the Free Polish Army, which he, as a Jew, joined in Paris. Dad taught evening classes in Russian. Mom was a pupil. When Mom was disillusioned with left-wingery, she became a JW. Dad became a Zionist. As a kid, first there was the Daily Worker, later the Watchtower and Jewish Chronicle.
Wow.
So,
wow. Not surprised. What did I say? The Marxism and the millennial cults of the 19th century, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not
now.
I'm not surprised.
What about so there's a lot of, so Marxism and Islamism have anti-Semitism in common. What do the Jehovah's Witnesses, what do they say about Jewish people?
They say we when I was a child were taught that the Jews were the chosen, the Israelites were the chosen of God. They were God's chosen people. And the Pharisees rejected Jesus, and Jesus came and sacrificed himself for all of humanity, making anyone who accepted Jesus and was in that sacrifice as the chosen people, like the new Israelites. But they believe that the Jews are in the wrong. They believe everybody's in the wrong. Jehovah's Witnesses believe everybody's wrong, right? Only they have the truth. But the real enemy of Jehovah's Witnesses is Catholic Church. Just like Marxism. The real enemy of Marxist ideology is Catholic Church.
So your mom must have just been pissed off at the church for something.
No, here's the thing. My mother got married at 18, had me when she was 19, moved to a town. My parents were poor. They worked in factories. They legally immigrated in the 60s. They worked in factories. My mother was a very depressed and unhappy person. And she made it very clear that I was born and just ruined her life, because if it wasn't for me, she would have just gone back to her family. And I was raised knowing constantly that I had ruined her life. So she was very depressed. And these two women came to the door. And like I said, Jehovah's Witnesses know how to love bomb. They know how to love bomb you. The vast majority of them are nice people. They're compassionate and they're peaceful, and they have the Bible, and they show you all these wonderful scriptures. And the next thing you know, you're in a congregation and you have all these new friends. And I think that's what took her. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. She was young. She was 19. No, I'm sorry. She wasn't. She had me when she was 19, so I was 6. She was 25. Mm-hmm. She was young.
Yeah.
You know, I think, she was more disillusioned with her life than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're talking about the love bombing and giving support, and it reminded me of, I don't know if this is true. You tell me if it's true, because you spent 60 hours a week doing this. Is it true that Jehovah's Witnesses scour the obituaries to find people who are in grief and then go to their homes?
I've never heard of that, and I've never done that.
Okay.
But wow, that would be something that would make sense if they did that. Mm-hmm.
Because they're very
then they could come with the resurrection, the promise of resurrection, all that, in Revelation. Yeah, no, I've never done that. I've never heard of that. We were just, the city was divided into chunks, and you're given a territory, and you just go and knock on doors. I've had dogs released on me twice. Once a Doberman Pinscher. Yeah, I made it by an inch. Like, closed the door of my car, and the Doberman was right there. Yeah, it's amazing that they would let kids. But then, it's the 70s, the 80s. We weren't special. Kids weren't special back then.
Yeah, that's right. Remember those ads? Kids are people too.
Yeah.
It was more in the 80s, but still, it was pretty
No
crazy.
Helmets, no nothing.
Yeah. I'm just going to tell you one little story before we go on to everybody who wants to ask you questions here. It was a young Jehovah's Witness and an older one. So I think he was in training, and the young guy came to the door, and he's speaking with the older guy kind of standing behind him. And I, got the sense that he was in training. So I felt bad, but he was trying to, get me to talk. And I was like, initially just being very polite, like, no, thank you, like, whatever. And I think he was really trying to impress his trainer. So he kept going. And I finally said, we worship Satan in this house. And then you see the older guy like pulls him by his eyes widen. Because I said it like deadpan, right? Like,
yeah. No, I get it.
And they never came again. So
they've come to my door, and I did that work. So I always ask, can I get you some water? Would you like, but I'm not interested. I said, I'm inactive. I'm no longer in the religion. And I never forget, I was in Italy, living my dream, living my best life. And this witness looks at me. She goes, oh yeah, I too went out into the world, and I got involved in drugs, and I got pregnant out of wedlock, and I did all these bad things, but then I found Jehovah. And I said, madam, I did not leave my faith to become a whore or to have drugs or to do any of that. I wanted an education. I wanted to travel. I wanted to do something with my life that brought me happiness and fulfillment. And she looked at me like she could not imagine that I had left to better myself, because they think that if you leave, you're just going to become a fallen woman, that you're just going to, I don't know, go out and be a prostitute, a drug user, an alcoholic. It's like, no, I left to better myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Foreign concept.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They think if you leave, then you're just going to be like on the streets, tweaking, boring.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Tochi, you go ahead, please.
Hey Yasmine, hey Jezebel.
Hello.
I wanted to ask you because you had mentioned something about some book you had written that was like set in the 14th century. I'd love to know a little bit more about it. If you want to just put
Oh,
in the link in like in the chat or something, if you don't necessarily want to, because I understand you're using like a different name
yes,
or
I
something
am.
like
I
that.
am.
Yeah, yeah.
Look,
So you can
you
just put that in the chat or, some
okay?
email Yasmine and I'll try to get it or something. You know what I mean? But I am
Yes,
curious.
yeah. Well,
Um,
here's the thing.
yeah.
In my real name, I've published 17 books. I write historical fiction, and I usually have strong female protagonists. I'm not who navigate a patriarchal world. And when I say patriarchal world, please don't think that I'm an angry feminist. I love men. I think men are wonderful, but they use their intelligence and their talents to navigate a world that was difficult back then for women. Because let's face it, we didn't have the freedom that we have today. You were controlled by fathers and husbands, and so I'm happy to send. I have if you want to email me at iamjezebel@yahoo.com.
Okay.
I'm happy to send, or if I can actually privately send it to Yasmin, I'll send you the name of the books. Thank you for that
No,
question.
you're very well. Yeah, no, very welcome. And honestly, like, I appreciate what you said before about you sort of analyzing patriarchy and things like that. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, I guess I could speak for me as a guy, but I find that feminists, the true feminists, quote unquote, love men, and we love y'all too. So,
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
we get it. Nah, for real,
Yeah,
we
the
get it.
true feminist loves men. We don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't understand this modern feminism that they just, it's just hate. All I see is hate. It's like, I
right.
love my husband. I love what, look out the window. Everything you see is created by men. Most of everything we have, all the cathedrals are created by men. All of the everything they did everything. Imagine a world without men. I can't imagine it. No, I love men. I'm grateful to them. It was men who fought for the freedom of women. I'm a historian. Men are the ones who fought for us to have the vote, for us to have a voice, for us to have equal opportunity in the workplace. It was all men.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I
and you
think,
know,
yeah, go ahead. To your
I was
point,
going to
yes.
say, and what women in the free world don't understand, that I understand as a historian, is that we have this freedom by the grace of men. Because if they decide to take away our freedom, they can do it quite easily.
I have to agree. I have to agree. I think that again, like you were saying, there's first of all, there's all kinds of men, and the truth of the matter is that hopefully, we can move as particularly as men, we can kind of evolve and get better at being treating everyone as equals. My question to you actually was, you at the very beginning you mentioned how your parents joined the Jehovah's Witness like right after the Doomsday failure, which I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is like, were they not familiar with the fact that this Doomsday prophecy thing had failed? Like, I mean, this is
So,
not like right away. You're like, oh, this is clearly bullshit. So like, I'm just very curious about that. I think it's really
well,
interesting.
okay, so I'll tell you. Okay, so I have the list here. Jehovah's Witnesses predicted the end in 1878, 1881, 1914, 1918, 1925, 1975. And prior to that, there was a district convention talk. Stay alive till 75. Filled convention stadium. And this brother talked about staying alive till 75. You have to, if you're still on the fence about Jehovah, just know that Satan owns the fence. I mean, that's the type of thing. So I remember once I brought up like about the failed prophecy, and the elder said, "Oh, no, no, no. That never happened. That was just a few brothers who got together, who tried to decipher things. And so they kind of gaslight you. And no, no, none of this ever happened." And it wasn't until 1995 that I started really the internet today, I'm like, the internet, the worst invention ever. But in 1995, it was great because I could research all this online library. And I discovered that it wasn't just some little brothers who invented this. This was actually in their written publications of the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society and part of a district convention. But they never discussed this because What do tyrants do? Same with political tyrants, religious tyrants. They never admit they're wrong. They never apologize. They just gaslight you, and you're supposed to just swallow it and pretend it never happened and keep going. So my mother did not know about that. And it wasn't until a few years later that there was a sister who was talking about it with her. I want to say 78, 79. I still remember this sister. We were visiting her house. She opened up a closet because she still had a baby in the house. It was filled to the top with all this formula and baby food because she said, because, the world was supposed to end. It's going to end any day now. And I just wanted to make sure that my child had enough food.
So what's the current date?
Well, there is no current date. They stopped putting dates. But like I said, they made it clear that the people who were alive in 1914 would still be alive to see Armageddon come. And then in 1995, that changed. And now they say, we no longer know when the date or the time is, but we do know that we're living in the last days, and it's imminent. I was raised with Armageddon around the corner. It's just around the corner.
You know what's interesting in Islam? Sorry, Tocha, I'm going to let you continue, but I'm just going to... Sorry, I'm going to let you finish. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, said that the span of space between these two fingers is how close the day of judgment is. So they also do that same kind of thing of like, oh, it's right around the corner. It's right around any minute now, any minute. So yeah, that fear mongering.
String you along, keep you on the hook, Yeah. I remember when I told my first husband that I was going to divorce him, and his sister came over right away. What if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if you leave the truth and you leave my brother and you go out into the world and Armageddon comes in 6 months? And I said, well, I'll have 6 months of freedom. I'll have 6 months that I am my own person. I have 6 months that my mind is free, that I am free, and I will die satisfied. I accept my mortality. If this is the only life I have to live on this planet, I want to be doing what I want to do. I don't hurt anybody. I help other people. I'm not a bad person. I said, I just want to do what I love. Like, life is precious and short. And I don't want to waste it in a doomsday cult. And she looked at me like, they don't accept their mortality. I hope I answered. I hope I answered your question. Is it?
You did. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Next is Sarah.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Sarah. It's so nice to put a beautiful face to the name.
You too. Thank you. So you've been talking about, I have a million different questions, and I want this to last like 48 hours because I have so many questions. But there are things that you talk about the similarities. Like, they call me names on a daily. Like, if you look at my Twitter, it just goes prostitute, slut, fahisha. That's the names I get called on a daily basis. And I like, whatever, you call me a bitch. I'm a bitch. I'm an angry feminist. I don't care anymore. At this point, it loses its meaning. Like, you think you call me names, I'll stop. Yes, I want to get naked. Like, that's the thing that's been going on forever, ever since woman life freedom movement started. Yasmine is that because, it's like, you want to get naked. That's all you want to do. No man will ever want you. I don't care. Yes, I want to get naked. That's my whole goal. Like, I want to have enough freedom to walk down the street naked and not get assaulted. I want to feel safe. So don't, when they call you brother and sisters, we have spaces on Twitter, and then they come on because we have in the title that we are talking about Islam and women, and they start calling us sister. So we make it forbidden right off the bat. You cannot call us sister because that's triggering to me. It's like, why do you call? I'm not your sister. Don't do that. You're not brothers and sisters. Like, the community, the love bombing, the ummah, right? Yasmin, it's just the ummah. This is us against the world. Like, there are so many, it felt like they took Islam and they put Christianity's stamp on it, and they said, okay, now we have a new name and this is a new religion. But it felt like the only big difference to me was the violence. And you don't seem to have that kind of honor violence, honor killing, FGM.
No, there's no honor killing. But believe me, there's physical abuse. I got hit with wooden spoons, leather straps, shoes. They're very into. I don't know about now, but I remember. I'll never forget this. I'll give you an example. So our congregation, my father's English wasn't good, and my first language was Portuguese, and our congregation. They wanted to start a congregation in our city, and they got this elder who was a tyrant. This man had no education. He was just coarse and petty. And he had a son who was a year older than me, and he invited us over to their house for dinner. And I remember sitting, the little boy's name, he died a terrible death, this poor boy. Am I allowed to say his name? His name was Joey. And he was eating chicken with his fingers. And the father, the elder, this is supposed to be the shepherd of our congregation. Joey, stop eating chicken with your fingers. And then, the kid's he's a kid. He's 7, 8 years old. He's a kid. Starts eating it again. Joey. Kid stops. Third time. Now, this is a dinner at this man's house. Stands up, takes off his belt, grabs the kid by the back of the neck, and just starts beating him. I start screaming, right? I start screaming, and I'm thinking, stop, please stop, please stop. He just beat this kid like an animal. And the poor boy, in addition to being swollen and red and hurt, you could see that I still remember the humiliation in this kid's eyes. And today, as an adult, I don't have children. Unfortunately, I don't have any kids. But I think to myself, how could my parents have gone to that man's house for dinner, sat through that, and then continued to go to that congregation with me and my siblings? How could they? Like, I would have picked up my kid, I would have left, and I would have said, you know what, guys? I don't want any part of this cult. And I would have left. And I would have probably called child services on that guy. But, he then put this belt back on, this elder, and said, Jehovah wants us to discipline, because if we don't discipline our children, it means we don't love them. So there is violence.
Exactly.
There is violence. There is no honor killing. Okay, you can't kill. But if a girl was to lose her virginity, she would be disfellowshipped because she would commit fornication out of wedlock.
Now, what does that mean? Like that was actually my question, because you talked about not being disfellowship. Why is that important? And why did you go back? Because you talked about leaving and then going back.
When I left, I did not get disfellowship when I left. I didn't want to be a witness anymore. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I left. And I rented this little tiny apartment in a basement. It was horrible. And I stayed there for a few months, and then my parents convinced me to go back. And I went back because I thought maybe I hadn't been spiritual enough. I wasn't good enough, because you have to be spiritual. I wasn't spiritual enough. I never really, I felt guilty all the time, because here's the thing. Jehovah can read your heart. That's what they teach us. They teach us that you have to love Jehovah with your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole soul, and you have to dedicate your life to him. And even if you were to just go by the actions of doing that, if it's not in your heart, Jehovah knows. Jehovah can see everything you do. He knows your every thought. So here I was as a kid, hating every second of being a Jehovah's Witness and feeling guilty all the time. And all my nightmares that I was having, they told me it was demons and Satan coming after me because I wasn't spiritual enough. So I grew up thinking I wasn't spiritual enough because the demons are attacking me. So I wanted to go back. I wanted to please because it's so much easier. Life is so much easier if you just please your family and you just please everybody, right? It's just so much easier, right? You just please everyone. Just do what they want you to do. You please everyone. You just put yourself in automatic drive and you just do it. married the presiding overseer's son. I was Jehovah's Witness royalty. But you can't live a lie. My life behind closed doors was just fights and tears. I remember one year going to the hospital 3 times with severe panic anxiety attacks. I thought I was having heart attacks. I had to be on Xanax. I started to drink in the middle of the day. I started to put my fingers down my throat and vomit. I was bulimic. I remember I was throwing up 3 times, 4 times a day because the only thing I could control in my life was what I put in my body. And by eliminating everything, I would feel clean. And then feeling clean meant that I was spiritually clean too. And it's just this vicious cycle of self-destruction.
I understand that because as a survivor of Islam, the only thing I can control when I'm falling apart is food. So if I start losing weight, I know I don't throw up or anything. I just don't eat. I stop eating. I control my food, my portions, like everything. I don't count calories because I know where that leads me. So I feel like it's okay. I'm exercising. My control is, I know it's wrong, but I rationalize. So I understand all of that. And thank you for speaking up today. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. It is an honor. Seriously, after I was astonished when I heard Yasmine speaking on the video, and then I bought her book and I read it, and I was just, oh my goodness. And then when you invited me to the podcast, I thought, what an honor to speak to these people. What an honor. And it's nice to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that you're not alone. It's not just Islam. You're not alone. It wasn't just Islam. It's other religions too. I read a book once years ago about a Mormon woman. And it was awful. Her story was very similar. It's very, very similar. It's the same tactics. It's the same. And a lot of women who go through this end up with food disorders, eating disorders. So yeah, I'm like you. I have to be careful.
Yeah. Whether it's Scientology, whether it's, Latter-day Saints or whatever, there's anytime I watch a cult documentary, I'm like, I get this. It's all so similar. And it is important for people, weirdly, it's important for me, for people to realize that Islam is no different from all of these cults because it humanizes us. Because for whatever reason, they see us as people who have renounced Islam as some demonic thing that doesn't deserve to be supported or appreciated or celebrated or honored in the same way that they would treat somebody who left Jehovah's Witness cult, Mormonism, Scientology, whatever it is. Anybody else is like, wow, this is amazing. Get these people a book deal, get them a movie deal, right? But when it's us, then it's like, shut them up. Those people are hateful. Those people are Islamophobic, racist, xenophobic, blah, 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 right? And I'm not talking about our ex-community because we expect it from them. I'm talking about the people who are supposedly the open-minded, free-thinking, liberal people. They're the
ones who are tolerant of diversity and then freak out and show no tolerance when you have a diverse thought. Can I just say to Sarah, she said that she gets called names every day and she gets insults every day. Consider the source. Make believe they're barking dogs. Anybody who has that much hate to offend someone they don't know and call them names, they're not even worth your time. Like I don't
mind, Jezebel. It's like, to me at this point, it's like, what else do you call me that you have not called me, so I can put it on my Twitter account as my bio? It's a game. Like, I get death threats on a daily basis. So as an ex-Muslim, names are just fun and game at this point. I heard that one before. Can you be more creative? So it's funny. It doesn't mean anything, really. They're little people, as Yasmine said. Like, ex-Muslims would give us death threats. The liberal, leftist, open-minded people call me names. It's like, you can't silence me at this point. I've survived much worse.
Well, these are the people who virtue signal, right? They're always virtue signaling about how wonderful they are and how, and they're synced to, I'm very afraid of people who virtue signal and who act sanctimonious. I know those people. I spent 20 years with these elders who were the most sanctimonious elders, and the ones who were the most virtue signaling were the biggest hypocrites, and they always project their sins onto everybody else. Because when somebody has love in their heart, they don't behave like that.
Yeah.
They don't have to blow a trumpet for their virtue. You can see by their actions who they are.
The fact that they don't see us as normal, real human beings, like me, my humanity, my existence is denied on a daily basis for these people. Like there's no conversation to be had anymore.
No.
Sorry, Yasmine, I'm taking over. Thank you so much.
You're absolutely correct. You're
and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's important. Thank you, Sarah. Tochi, you had another question.
Yeah. You mentioned, Jezebel, that you had basically you started to become enlightened by going online in 1995 to read stuff on the internet, which I think is actually kind of humorous, considering the state of the internet now. So I guess my question to you is like, I'm almost surprised that you didn't end up reading some other bullshit and like, jumping into like a completely different cult, all things considered. So in a way, do you think like do you think it was easier back then to read stuff online? I mean, do you feel like stuff online was more factual back then? I'm just kind of curious, like, how did your mind sift through and read what made sense and was able to guide you out? Whereas I feel like there's a fair amount of people that could have stumbled onto more weird shit and just gone in a different direction. You know what I mean?
Right. No, well, it's funny you say that. Well, I went online and I started looking up the history, and I found out that Jehovah's Witnesses used to sell miracle flour that would make your bread rise faster. It's something crazy. That they bought a mansion in California called Bethel, and it was supposed to house all of the ancients who would be resurrected. And then I found out that after Charles Taze Russell, the founder, died, Judge Rutherford took over, and there was a nasty divorce between them. I mean, I found out all these like little things and the doomsday, But then when I left the religion and I went to go try to find a community of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, many of them had done just what you said. They fell into born-again Christian, or they fell into I'm a Baptist now, or, the Seventh-day Adventist. They basically just did a parallel move, because those are also fundamentalist religions. It's like all you have to do now is believe in Jesus. Yeah, but you're still following all of these, it's still a fundamentalist religion. There are very few religions that allow you to have the freedom of free will and still accept you, right? I mean, like, I know that Catholicism, it takes a lot for you to get excommunicated from the church, right? I mean, you can commit fornication, adultery, and still go into the church, confess your sins, take Holy Communion. They're not going to excommunicate you. But with these fundamentalist religions, like you said, you jump from one cult right to another. I just wanted to be free. I just wanted to go into academia and study. I didn't want anything to do with religion. I just wanted to study history because that was my passion. That's what I wanted to do, is study the Middle Ages, study the Renaissance, and that's all I do now. I just write and study about that. And I guess that's why I didn't jump in, because I didn't want to go into another religion. I just wanted freedom and be able to like breathe and not have to walk on eggshells anymore. And live my life. I live my life as if God exists. I don't want to say that, because I'm sure the Quran and the Bible and the Torah and all these holy books, they have good advice. Don't steal, live your life, don't lie, be honest, be a good neighbor, do unto others. All those things I want to apply to my life. And I think I live as though God exists, okay? And I realize that there must be many ways to get to God. But I don't think God is so petty and angry and nasty that you have to be in a cage to be accepted by him. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah. So I think that's why I didn't want to be involved in another oppressive community that's going to be, why didn't you go to the meeting? Or why didn't you this? Or why didn't you that? Oh, look at that skirt. Or, maybe you're wearing too much lipstick. Or, you get tired. You just get tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people, I think, find like they do exactly what Toshi said. They leave one group and they join another because they want that tribalism. Like we are pack animals, and they find such comfort in that community and stuff. But I'm like you, where I get like I just get covered in hives at the thought of being part of some sort of in-group where I have to speak a certain way and act a certain way, and where I'm being policed, and like I cannot. No, please.
No.
I want nothing is more valuable to me than my freedom to think what I want to think, and to act the way I want to act, and say what I want to say, and be who I want to be, and wear what I want to wear. Like, oh my gosh, I'm still so grateful every day for all of these freedoms.
Yeah, for being free and to have the rights to do it, to have the rights to do it. And I want to keep those rights. I want to keep those civil liberties. I don't want the useful idiots to take them away from me. Like,
yeah,
my goodness, I'm coming full circle. Like, I don't want to be in a political cult. I don't want to be in a religious cult. I don't want to be in a political cult. I just want my freedom. And you know, and that's the thing. I'm not a judgmental person. If somebody wants to live like a unicorn, go for it. Just don't make me have to say that you're a unicorn. I'll fight for your rights to be a unicorn, but I'm not going to play in your delusion. Just leave me alone. I don't think that's a lot to ask.
That's how I feel. That's why I always say I find Jews to be the most like evolved out of the three Abrahamics, because they just leave us alone. Like you want to you want to do kosher, you want to do, whatever it is that you do it. They're not going to try and force us to follow whatever their beliefs are, right? And that's like, just do that. Just practice it over there in your church or your mosque or your whatever, and leave us all alone. There's quite a few questions here, but I'm going to ask people if you could just remind us again. It's I am Jezebel at
yahoo.com.
Yahoo.com. Okay, great.
I am Jezebel at yahoo.com, and I will respond to every single email.
Beautiful.
Personally.
Thank you, Jezebel.
I don't have an assistant. It's just me. I will personally respond. I have no kids. I have no pets. So I have time to respond to every single email.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you so much. So I'm going to give you the last word before we wrap up here. What are your some like final parting words to everybody? Some words of advice, or anything that you want to share with us that you maybe didn't have a chance to say?
Oh, I can't reiterate how important it is to just live your truth. Knowledge is the antidote to fear. I cannot stress this enough. Knowledge is the antidote to fear, and just live your true self. And there's nothing more precious than your individual sovereignty. Like, really, my father, he's 83. He grew up under a socialist dictator, oppressive poverty, tyranny. And I think of his stories. And we, right now in the world, are in such a precipice of things can go so wrong. And all I want to do is just sound the alarm for people to just really safeguard their bodily autonomy and their individual sovereignty and their free will. That's it.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Love it. Great message. Thank you so much, Jezebel.
Thank you
for
Thank
sharing
you so
everything with us today. We really appreciate your honesty and, enlightening us all about Jehovah's Witnesses and sharing your story with us. We appreciate it so much. And there will be people getting in touch with you to continue this conversation.
I'm happy to respond. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My absolute pleasure and honor. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
After hearing all that, you might be left wondering, what can I do? How can I help? Well, this is why I created a nonprofit called Free Hearts, Free Minds. We are the only organization dedicated exclusively to helping these free thinkers. We empower them with our programs and supportive community, lifting them up so they can heal, speak out, and begin to make positive changes. not just in their own lives, but within the broader community around them. If this is a cause that resonates with you and you want to make a difference, one way to do that is by donating to Free Hearts, Free Minds. Because not enough people care about this cause, we need people like you to help fuel this change. You can donate via our website, freeheartsfreeminds.com. Thank you. Every dollar you donate makes a difference.